Okay, got those 3 screws out. I still have the lock screw in here. Just a side note, go over these pieces of hardware. Hey guys, I want to show you I got the bolt that held the steering wheel on. There's a plastic retainer over the lock plate. The lock plate and electrical horn mechanism are there, plus the little retainer that holds the lock plate in place. I got them all lined out. That's a screw that holds the arm for the turn signal arm onto the turn signal switch. That's your hazard all assembly. Now these are 2 screws. There should be 3. They were for holding the turn signal switch in, and you can see the towel back there. I had one of those screws roll back and go down the heater vent. So that's history. Be a little electrical piece that's in there we pulled out, and there's 3 screws that are holding this portion of the steering column together, and that's it. By the way, the 3 silver screws that are Torx, I use the screwdriver, a T27, I believe it is. Yeah, a Torx 27. Fits a little bit loose. I didn't have anything else for it, so it might be a 28 if there is such a thing. T27 was able to take them out though. Okay, now we're going to work on the wheels ignition cylinder. This is a T20 Torx that fits snugly, very healthy in that hole. It's tight. You can hear it snap. We'll need the needle nose to get that out. No, pull that right out. Now that's a special kind of a, where am I here? That's a smooth type of a bolt. That's a very special bolt. You'd be running into a salvage yard if you lose that. Okay, this piece is able to pull off. I don't think there's any real parts. I already took it off just to test it, but this piece on the back is held on. Oh, see, there's a piece that fell out. This is a piece that slides back and forth. I believe this is the part of your high beams. This presses on a rod for the high beams when you pull the turn signal lever forward. We'll put that up with our collection. Here's what but basically, you'll have to finagle this, pull this forward. You might have to pull this up a little. Just work this piece off. I'm just going to twist this counterclockwise and take this plastic piece off right here. Got the tilt lever off. That freed up this piece. That's got some grease on it. I'll put that up on the dash. This tilt lever was a little stubborn getting off. I just had to like really grip it pretty hard to turn it. It is Loctited on there. Counterclockwise, takes it right off. Underneath you can see the basic shielding or the fairing for the steering column and the turn signal mechanism in there. Just let that hang, no problem with that. Have a little bit more to go. Just a quick note. This little lever here, this is your high beams and low beams. That piece of plastic that fell out, this little guy, this thing, one way or the other, when you put it back together, this little curve intersects with, presses on this. I might have it upside down. I'm not sure if I do. That's got to go in there to press the turn signal switch up or down. The reason I'm focusing on this is if you pull this upwards, if you pull this out, it's going to come out of a socket in the high beam switch. Now you can very easily take your cover off down underneath your dash. You can't even see it down here, it's too dark, but you can take the plastic cover off and you'll be able to see that high beam switch. I thought we had a little more to go, but I want to focus on this guy right in here. This is your pin for your tilt steering. Here's where your tilt steering rod was, so if you want to tilt it and watch it function, you can push that back in. This is the pin that we're going to put that funny little tool in. There's one on the other side, and once we take that apart, this whole head assembly is going to either come off or loosen up, and then we can get in there and we can take the bolts out, clean them, Loctite them, put them back in. What we're looking at, this has got to be cut in earlier when we're taking everything apart. Spring removal. Right now you got a lot of spring tension on that. This is the spring, the cap for the spring. There's a square hole in it, and very simply the appropriate size screwdriver should fit in corner to corner. There's probably a tool for it. I've used a screwdriver on every one. You got to push in with a good bit of force, just like this. Turn counterclockwise, and the cap will come off. There's the cap, and here's the spring. That simply unloads the spring tension. There's nothing on here that's going to drop or fall away. You have the spring, and you have the cap. Just put that out of the way for now. Without that spring on there, now there's virtually no tension. So all the spring tension is relieved. And for this is the tool I showed you earlier. I spun this nut all the way as far as it would go towards the cap of the tool. And the silver nut I spun clockwise all the way on the shank of the tool. Put this in and start to thread it, the little piece. Once it's in a couple threads, that open side of that collar goes towards the front of the car, or the bottom of the steering column. And then you twist it on. Now it's going to turn. I'm going to set the camera down, but I'm going to twist it in and show you what it looks like after. Okay, I put the tool on. This collar's still loose, but the tool's on. We can start to tighten this bolt down now. I'm just going to go counterclockwise with the crescent wrench on the silver nut, and that's going to start pulling that tilt pin out. I replaced a steering column in my van, and I tried to take that apart, and I guess it was an older steering column, and all the parts fell out in one shot. I didn't know how they went back together. That was the only one I screwed up. I had to go to the salvage yard and buy a whole nother steering column. And just for spite, I took it apart to see if it was the same, and it was completely different. So I don't know why that one I lost the parts to. It must have been an older steering column. Give you a look at this pin. Well, this is just the pin I pulled out of there. You can take that off. It's a little bit greasy. Put that up on the dash. Don't let it roll anywhere. Now I'm going to go ahead and extract the other one just the same way, and we'll get right back to you. Okay, I just finagled this out of there. This is what the ignition lock was on, the ignition cylinder. I just put a needle nose on that and turned it slightly, which turned this gear to allow me to pull this out. And the spring just slides very easily on and off the top of that. So I'll set this in my dash. Pull this spring off. I'm going to pull this collar off. And then there's a little collar underneath we got to dig out of there too. That needs to come out. I'm going to put that on the dash in just the correct orientation. First the collar. When you put this back together, you can see it here. This piece goes inside that collar. That's exactly the way it sits, and then the spring will go on top of it. The spring will go on top of it, so we want to orient it back in the same way. But you're going to pull forward on this, and lean it down, and this whole piece now starts to come out. There's a little slide gear in here that's going to fall out. Just take that out. That's not too much of a problem. Once you're at this point, the big problem is how do you get it off? We have, if you remember, the turn signal switch only has so much pull. So what I do is put this back in the vicinity of where it was. I can take this out now, the tilt rod. Screw that, take it out. To get all this off, I basically put it all back on together.